Again, it is South Africa tonight. Now, we chatted about this just a few moments ago. South Africa's score on Transparency International's Corruption Perceptions Index has improved by 1 point from number 44 to 43. Now, the index ranks 180 countries on a scale of 0 to 100. 0 signifies highly corrupt, and 100 shows clean governance. So you can imagine 43, 44, not much of a difference. Well, Corruption Watch says there isn't much to celebrate, yes, as South Africa is still ranked among countries struggling with corruption. Well, let's discuss this now with Corruption Watch's David Lewis. David, good evening. And yes, hardly anything to celebrate, and we have to ask why, when we know that this issue has come up time and time again over many, many years for us.
Yeah, well, you know, there is nothing to celebrate. You know, I suppose the good news is that we haven't gone down. The bad news is that we haven't really gone up. You know, this time, for the first time, I think the Transparency International have tried to correlate the rankings and the scores with other factors, with other variables. And the theme of the report is to do with money in politics, which is really another way of talking about corruption. And they've made, the interesting finding is that countries that regulate party political funding tend to do better, or always do better, than countries that don't regulate party political funding. And, you know, the beauty of a simple finding like that is that it's instructive. And I hope it causes the President to sign the Party Political Funding Act, or to bring into operation the Party Political Funding Act, which he signed a year ago. And it's out of these kind of actions that perceptions are developed, and where the perception is that you're doing something, and so things are getting better. And that's what is needed.
And I suppose that's the question then, David. I mean, although, you know, we know that the Parliament passed this Act in January last year, but the President yet to bring it into operation, as you say, do we have to ask, is this just window dressing? Because we haven't heard anything after that. And what has happened, you know, what has happened to our to money that has gone into political, to election campaigns? What has been the knock-on effect of that? What have been the consequences of that?
Well, the President has suffered grievously from precisely that that phenomenon, you know, in his candidature for the ANC leadership. You know, I don't know how to explain that, and nobody is able to explain that, unless it's explained yet again by, you know, cold feet in the ANC about disclosing party political funding. I was surprised that it was supported in the first place, and it was pushed through Parliament with unusual speed. But, you know, there are other things in South Africa. I mean, prosecutions that need to be seen to be done of high-ranking politicians and business people. You know, state-owned enterprises, which, you know, everybody now knows from the Zondo Commission and the like, were the principal targets of corruption. And, you know, their performance has not improved. The lights are still going out. The PRASA trains are still not working.
Despite everything we're hearing.
SAA is still barely flying. And so, you know, if they could somehow improve the performance of state-owned enterprises, it would again say to people, there's a real will to tackle corruption. We've got to go for those.
And that, David, was my next question, is what is it? Do we not have the will? Do we not have the ability? Or is there a deliberate attempt not to? Because you can't imagine.
You know, I've thought, you know, ever since the Ramaphosa administration was established, that from the top, that there is a will to tackle corruption. I think that everybody has known that there are enormous divisions in the ruling party, in the governing party, over precisely those questions. I think there is a will, and, you know, I belong to that diminishing number of people who think that he achieved, or that administration achieved, substantial progress in the first years. And there seems to have been a bit of a backsliding, quite honestly. And it will be interpreted, whether what you and I think about it is neither here nor there, because it will be interpreted as a lack of political will, and therefore the perception will be that we still have a major corruption.
And other than the Zondo Commission, what else do we have that seems to be tackling any form of corruption in the country?
Yeah, well, you know, I think the NPA is getting back onto its feet.
Very slowly, though. Too slowly,
I mean,
for our liking.
difficult, but I think it is. I think SARS is getting back onto its feet. I mean, the high-profile state-owned enterprises that deliver services to the public, like Eskom, are clearly not. If anything, their position is deteriorating. So there are signs that things are being done, but I'm afraid that they're not substantial enough to turn perceptions around. And, you know, this perceptions index measures public sector corruption, but at the grand scale. It doesn't say what people are doing to get into public hospitals or to get houses. And I mean,
it's worse than what we see
endemic.
here.
Yeah.
Okay, so not the best news. And I don't know, hopefully next year we have a better number, a higher number to talk about, David. Thanks very much for that. Well, that's where we stand, number 44, or we have 44 out of 100, not a great pass, that is.